Nancy stops outside the door and shines her flashlight up and down the darkened hall to see if anyone else is there. The light picks out something lying on the floor at the far end by the wastebasket. Curious, she moves towards it only to find it's just a crumpled piece of paper. She's about to drop it in the basket when a word on it catches her eye. Stovetop. Flashlight clamped under one arm and the doll under the other, she flattens out the paper, which is from a Shadow Ranch bedside notepad. On it is a hastily scrawled list. Raise hot water temp, cut electricity, soap under throw rugs, fray egg basket, loosen gas valve, lose truck key, rig closet, unplug refrigerator, lighter fluid on stovetop. Wow, somebody is sabotaging Shadow Ranch. And they conveniently wrote out a list of all the bad things they did, so we have the perfect piece of evidence to prove they're guilty. Nice. Good eye, Nancy. Good eye. She caught the best piece of evidence ever. But no sooner does she realize what she's holding than she hears a shriek in one of the bedrooms behind her. She hurries down the hall to Bess and George's room. There she finds the two cousins, shining a purse-sized flashlight on the dresser. Bess has her hands clasped over her mouth in horror. "Oh, Nancy!" she cries when she sees her friend. "It's gone! The doll's gone!" "It's okay, I have it." Nancy holds the doll up so Bess can see it. Relieved, Bess takes it from her. "Oh, thank goodness, I've got to get rid of this thing." "Says who?" Nancy probes. "Everybody, even Suzanne, especially Suzanne." George shakes her head ruefully. Those guys should have never told her. She's totally freaking out. "I'm going to throw it outside, then go back to the ghost town first thing tomorrow and seal it back up in that wall." "You can't do that, Bess." "Why not?" "Because that's exactly what someone wants you to do." The cousins stare at her, baffled. "What are you talking about?" George finally asks. Speaking rapidly in hushed tones. Nancy shows them the list. "I found this by the wastebasket. It looks like someone was brainstorming ways to sabotage the ranch. See? Lighter fluid on stovetop, soap under throw rugs. Those so-called accidents were deliberate. Bad luck had nothing to do with them." "Someone's trying to frame a doll?" Bess is totally mystified. "I think someone wants to get that doll very badly, and getting you to get rid of it voluntarily is the best way for that person to get a hold of it without raising a lot of suspicion." "Why would anyone want that awful thing?" George asks. "It's an antique, but it can't be that valuable," Bess agrees. Nancy shakes her head as she struggles to think of an answer. "It has something to do with why it was hidden in the wall in the first place. It's got to." "The sheriff hid it there because he was mad at it as a kid?" George shrugs, guessing wildly. Suddenly, Nancy's eyes go wide as the explanation hits her. "It wasn't the sheriff who hid it!" she exclaims. "It was the person next door! Tobias Richter, the assayer!" Do-do-do! Congratulations, Nancy! You just solved the mystery! Hopefully this means everybody is going to resume talking at normal speed. Nancy thrusts her flashlight into George's hands, takes the doll from Bess, and starts to examine it closely. But the sound of heavy items avalanching to the floor in another room causes her to freeze. "Now what?" Bess moans. The three girls turn and hurry out of the room toward the noise. Nancy and George with their flashlights, and Bess carrying the doll. "All right, way to contribute, Bess." In an alcove off the kitchen, they come upon Aunt Bet lying unconscious on the floor in front of an overstuffed storage closet. One of the things on the sabotage list was rig the closet so everything in the closet will fall on the person who opens it. Looks like Aunt Bet just fell for the trap. Beside her is a tall wire rack tipped on its side. Books, several glass bowls, and a porcelain vase are scattered on the floor around her. A brass candelabra lies near her hand. The woman's eyes flutter open as the girls crouch around her. "Aunt Bet," George cries, "can you hear me?" The woman mutters unintelligibly as her eyes slowly regain focus. Dallas arrives on the scene, followed by the Wallaces, Bonnie, Suzanne, and Andre. "What happened?" Andre demands. "She said she was going to look for candles," Jim replies. "The candelabra hit her on the head when she opened the closet," Dallas says. "Is she all right?" Jamie bends over the woman worriedly. "Should we call somebody?" "The way our luck is going, the phones probably don't work," Bonnie comments grimly. Her eyes open, Aunt Bet pushes herself up on her elbows and looks around, bewildered. "What's going on? What am I doing down here?" You got hit on the head when you opened the closet, Nancy relates. You must have fallen backwards and tripped over this rack. And tipped over this rack. I'll go get you some water, Bess offers. No! Suzanne snatches the doll from Nancy and shoves it into Bess's chest. Wait, I thought Bess was carrying the doll. Huh? I'm confused now. The only thing you're going to do is get rid of this monstrosity, now, before one of us gets killed. I gotta second that, Jim says solemnly. Ditto, Dallas agrees, putting his arm around his wife. In view of everything that's happened, Andre admits, it certainly couldn't hurt. Nancy gets to her feet, takes the doll from Bess, and addresses the group firmly. This doll is not responsible for all of these accidents. Someone who wants this doll is. Someone who wants Bess to put it back, so later, with no one the wiser, they can retrieve it and keep it for themselves. She holds up the list she found. Someone who even made a list of all the things they could do to make it seem as if the doll was a jinx. Someone who is right here in this room. Who do you think is behind the bad luck? Is it Andre, the Criders, Suzanne, or the Wallaces? I'm going to give you all some time to think it over. Try to figure out who the culprit is. Have you all figured it out yet? That's enough time for thinking. It was not Andre Ferris. That person is Andre Ferris. The man regards her with surprise and then starts to chuckle. You're wrong, I assure you. That's why you were in the ghost town all by yourself. You're in the process of retrieving the doll, only we interrupted you and Bess wound up finding it first. The man shakes his head and sighs. That list you have, where did you get it? I found it by the wastebasket in the hallway. Well, that proves I'm not the culprit. I've been in the kitchen, the dining room, and the great room, and nowhere else, and I've never been out of anybody's sight. Am I right? The other guests think about this, then they agree. I'm right, which means you, young lady, are wrong. I may be eccentric, but I don't want that doll. Well, it was also not Suzanne Lemur. It's Suzanne Lemur. The woman's jaw falls open. Excuse me? You know all about Dirk Valentine, so I'm willing to bet you know all about that doll, too. You know it's valuable, so you've been causing accidents and promoting the idea that the doll is a jinx so you can get it yourself. Suzanne just looks at her, still dumbfounded. Excuse me? Why else would you be so insistent that Bess get rid of it? Nancy demands. I think you're on the wrong track here, Nan, George says gently. She wants Bess to get rid of the doll because she really and truly believes it's a jinx. Anyone can see she's neurotic. She believes in all kinds of stupid stuff like that. Everybody nods and murmurs in agreement. Suzanne sneers. See? I'm neurotic. Then what was just said about her sinks in. Her face clouds. She turns to George. Wait a minute. Excuse me? Okay, it was not the Wallaces. It's you two, Jim and Jamie Wallace. Jamie looks at her incredulously. What? As I recall, and my memory is pretty darn good, Jim was the one who first suggested Bess put the doll back in the ghost town. Yeah, because it's one of the creepiest things I've ever seen, not because I wanted it. Nancy shakes her head. You're always surfing the web. I think you found out the doll was in the wall and that it was valuable, only Bess got to it first. So you and Jamie caused all these accidents in order to convince Bess to get rid of it. Jim thrust his arm at her indignantly. I was the victim of one of those accidents, remember? You probably just pretended to slip and fall. I bet you're just fine. To make her point, she jabs his elbow. Ow! He pushes his sleeve up, revealing a very swollen, very bruised elbow. The other guests wince when they see it. Jim would never do that to himself, Jamie asserts angrily. Why, he can barely lift his smartphone now, let alone operate it. He would never purposely cut himself off from cyberspace like that. Ever! Okay, the culprit by elimination has to be the Criders. It's the Criders. Aunt Bet, by now fully conscious, stands up and looks at Nancy shocked. Nancy, how can you say that? His arm still around Bonnie, Dallas shakes his head in disbelief. Especially after what happened to Bonnie here. Walked right into a door. Almost put her eye out. She did it to herself, to deflect suspicion by looking like a victim. I don't believe I'm hearing this, Bonnie whimpers. And let me see, how much time do I have left? It looks like Nancy's explanation is going to be kind of long. Wow, it looks like this is only the first half of the explanation. So, because the explanation is going to be kind of long, I'm going to save it for the next video.